Hi guys.
Hello.
Welcome to at ARLENE Spirit Cast. If you're new to this podcast, we talk about all things related to mindfulness, magic, astrology, tarot, spirituality,
Witchcraft, wizardry,
Reiki, just everything like in that realm. We're into it all, open to it all.
Yeah.
And we love to have guests who are like that. Today we have a really awesome guest who is a channeler.
Yes.
And I found him when I was listening to someone else's podcast, I believe. And I clicked on it because it said that he channeled Jesus. And I was intrigued.
Yes.
So, I was listening to it. And it's funny because when I started listening to it, I went in for like, I don't know. I just went into it because I thought it was funny.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to, I just thought it was interesting. And then he started talking and I really liked what he was saying. I thought it would be cool to have him on the podcast because he was just spreading this really like loving, openness. And I also really wanted to have somebody on the podcast who could channel. So
See, I feel like this is where you're like the Mulder to my Scully with some stuff.
Yeah.
Like this is one of those moments because when you told me about this after you listened to it, because you get excited about things sometimes. And when you said that, I listened to this podcast, this guy channels Jesus, we have to interview him. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Like, lose me with that.
Yeah.
There's no, like, come on. Are you serious?
Yeah.
I need to look this guy up. So then I looked him up and he made me listen to some of his stuff, some of his YouTube videos, and yeah, we got him on the podcast. Yeah. I am open to channeling. It's like, you know, Esther Hicks and like Jerry and Esther, what Abraham.
Yeah.
And like the Seth Speaks stuff.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I early on, a couple years ago, before I really took a deep dive into this realm, I was not into channeling. I was kind of it kind of scared me. I'm not gonna lie. It took me a minute to read the Abraham books. I remember Seth Speaks. I was apprehensive. So if you're not familiar with these books, the books are channeled from a higher energy. Anyone who's listening and who doesn't know who Abraham Hicks is. And initially I was kind of like, I don't know, weirded me out. Weirds a lot of people out. But then I don't know, I gradually was like, thought it was cool. And I enjoy listening to people channel. I actually, when we met the one girl who could channel, we've met a couple people who channel angels and can see angels and other energies. And we met one in person, and I remember I like fangirled like super hard because I found that I just really enjoyed hearing those messages and I thought it was fun. So yeah, we early on in the year we said we wanted to get people on here who channel.
Yeah.
And we have him. He's really, really cool. We really enjoyed our conversation with him. It was a very magical experience. He can channel everything.
Everything.
Like, I mean, we've interacted with people who just choose to channel certain energies, but he does everything. He can do mediumship. What are some of that? He used like a board sometimes.
Mediumship, animal communication, obviously like channeling like the angels and higher energies such as like Buddha, Jesus, so on and so forth. The board, I can't remember exactly what the name of the board he initially used, but we cover it in the interview.
Yeah, you asked him.
I did ask him. Yeah, I asked him because it's just so intriguing to me. Because we like you just said, like we've interviewed a lot of people who channel, but they usually only channel or only do like one like a mediumship. Like they only do mediumship, or they only channel the Archangels, or they only channel like, you know, one type of higher like one type of higher energy,
like a collective.
Yeah. It's not all these different like groups of all these different things, and it's not like Barry, who we're gonna do the intro for soon, has been doing this forever. This is something like that is new, a newer ability that has come into his existence in the past couple years.
Yeah.
You know, some people that we've interviewed, which the next lady coming up after him, we'll post soon eventually. I got tongue-tied. Okay, so unlike most people who channel or are connected to higher energies, he did not do this his whole life. You know, some people will say they had a near-death experience and then they were connected to God or source energy and then were able to communicate with their guides. And then that's how it got started. But this is different.
Yeah, his story is really cool. I mean, just like with all of our guests, I feel like we just scratched the surface speaking with him.
We're definitely gonna have him back on.
Yeah.
I really, this conversation, like, we are very grateful to have had all the past guests that we've had and the future guests that we're going to have. Like, we've had such amazing, informative guests on our show. And this is one of them. And this is one of the, I'm like getting tongue-tied now again. Like, this interview was just so moving. Like, for me as a person, like, I was going into this as a full skeptic, like, didn't know what the heck I was going to get myself into. And I came out of it, like, completely shaken by just the energy of it all and the messages that he was putting forth, like, completely.
Yeah, we were like crying, but like, okay, so I'll tell you guys a story about how this interview went. So we get online to talk to him because we didn't do this one in person, and right out the gate he says something along the lines of, "Hello, ladies," and he said, "I'm here with Archangel Raphael." Now, he had no idea that, and I didn't know that Arlene had did this meditation prior to the interview, and she didn't know I did, but we both did Archangel Raphael meditations earlier that day. And, but we didn't communicate that with each other, and we didn't communicate that with Barry. He just showed up to the interview with Archangel Raphael, and then he said Archangel Raphael told him we asked for him. So right out the gate, we were just like speechless. And he did that throughout the whole interview. So we don't have that segment. We weren't recording whenever that happened. And there were other things that happened like that we weren't recording for. But it's recorded, some of it.
Some of the stuff is, but some of the stuff's personal. Can't share it.
Oh, it was
public.
amazing.
But it was that alone, like, that just right out the gate, like, had me, like, shaken. I was done. I was like, okay, this is how it's going to go. Like, all right, I'm open, UK. You know, I feel like the universe is like, you want proof that this is real? Here you go, bitch.
Yeah. Yeah. That I've never I mean, that was, I can't even explain that. Like, who
to this day, like, we pre-record a lot of our interviews because, you know, that's life. We do a lot. And this is, to this day, like, I'm still feeling that, like, just talking about it makes me feel that energy, like, come through again. I'm like,
get like flustered.
I get flustered and, like, tongue-tied because I'm, like, so moved by the whole experience still. Like, even that, like, that just was just a magical week, period. Like, talking to Ernesto was amazing. Talking to Karen, who we're going to have episode come out after this, was amazing as well.
Just everybody.
And everybody. So.
Okay, so I will do a quick introduction to who we're interviewing since we're hyping him up.
Going as open-minded.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming if you're listening to this podcast, you're pretty open-minded, and we firmly believe in that.
Yes.
We're open to everything. We live in a strange world, and, you know, everybody's belief systems are valid, and X, Y, and Z, whatever. Just open-minded. Anyway, so his name is Barry Strohm, and he does everything with his wife, Connie.
Yes.
She wasn't in the interview.
No.
She sounds pretty amazing as well. They're like a team. And as Arlene had said, he was not like a witchy, like, mystic, like, or a person that was into that stuff, like channeling or anything like that. He had gotten into it after his, like, career, you know, like, later in life. And he's actually authored, like, 6 books based on his spiritual communication. And as his abilities increased, he became able to read messages from, as he said, the holiest of spirits, which is, guess, guys, Jesus. Yeah. And he has Buddha as well. He has, like, so many. It's like, oh gosh, like, oh my goodness. But anyways, he in his earlier books, he tells the realities of the afterlife and of communicating with historical figures like President Kennedy, George Patton, George Custard, Butch Cassidy, just to name a few, all the Archangels, pretty much, like the disciples, just all of them. And this book, his newest book, it incorporates channel information from Jesus, his mother, and his disciples, which is really fun. And I actually want to read all of his books.
Yes.
He gets into like galactic spirituality too.
Yeah, I think he has a couple books about that too. It's very interesting. Like I said earlier, like we've never interviewed somebody that has done all this, and then especially in such a condensed period of time.
Yeah.
Like that to me is like, as authors ourselves, like it's hard sometimes to get the juices flowing to get books out or just to get writing done. And to do this stuff like this, like that has to be divine intervention.
Yeah.
I don't care what the heck you believe.
Yeah. He's really cool. It was really cool, really enjoyable interview. And yeah.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Connie. And we will definitely be having Barry back on here.
Yeah.
100%.
If he wants to.
If he wants to, probably 5 times. Put it out there in the universe.
Just keep asking over and over.
Barry, please, do you have anything you would like to share?
Yeah.
Share with the community.
Messages.
Hey guys, we just want to take a second to let you know where you can find us at. You can listen to our podcast on all major podcasting networks like Stitcher, iTunes, and more. You can also follow us on Instagram at ARLENE, on Twitter at edpro_pgh, on Pinterest at ARLENE, on Tumblr at ARLENE, and you can go to our website to subscribe for some Reiki. Thanks for listening.
The story behind a protection prayer is this. When we first started board channeling, the guides came through to us and they said, first of all, never ever invite evil in what you do. And then the guides themselves gave us this prayer. And we always repeat it before we do any radio shows or any instance where we're going to open a channel to the other side. And the prayer that the Spirit gave us, that the Spirit guides gave us, is as follows. God, please grant us your wisdom and protection. Grant us the knowledge that we can handle and keep us safe from all things that will harm us. Keep the messages positive and pure love. Keep us safe from our own ego. We ask these things in the light of the seen, the unseen, and the honesty of God. And that's how we start every session.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so our first question is, how did you start channeling? Like, when did you know that this was something that you could do?
Well, first of all, I didn't even believe in ghosts until I was about 60 years old. So there's this whole big chain of events takes place to convince us about ghosts and what's going on around us. And we were introduced to channeling by friends out in Salt Lake City. And we met these people. My wife became good friends with them. And they told us, that their mother had been a medium and that they had been board channeling for 40 years out in Salt Lake. And they invited me to come to one of their sessions. So they were in downtown Salt Lake, and I walk in, and I sit down at the room with a table, and they're sitting on each side of this board, and it's different than them. It's definitely not a Ouija. It's circular, has letters and numbers in a circle, and it has a glass top. And they were actually using a shot glass on top as a planchette for it. So we sit down and they start, and the first message that they get on the board is, "Hello, Barry, we were waiting for you."
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And then they proceed to tell me everything that I was doing back in Pennsylvania. And I'm just blown away with this thing. I mean, it's unbelievable, the information that's coming off of this channeling board. So having seen it, I was hooked. I needed to learn to do this. So my friends out there started to teach us how to use a board. I made one, and we started working on it. And in the beginning, I would have to work with somebody that had much stronger psychic energy than I did. But eventually, Connie and I developed the ability to get messages on this channeling board. So I've probably done it for 400 or 500 hours at least that we've used this board. And we've done it with no problem because we're very, very well protected.
Okay.
Well, as we're progressing, all of a sudden I start to realize that when we're hitting the first letter of a word, I'm hearing the word in my head. So I'm thinking, maybe I don't need to do the board. So we asked the guides, and they said, yes, you need to do this mentally. You do not need the board any longer. So the next time we wanted to talk to spirit, I just started speaking their words, and I open my mouth and their words come out. And so for the last 2 years, that's basically what we've been doing. Just like the little example I gave you before we came online, I was just simply speaking the words of the spirit.
Wow. So when the messages come through, is it just like an inner knowing, or do you hear?
It is just automatic.
Just automatic.
I'll ask the questions, and I just simply start speaking words, and it's their words. And things come out of my mouth that I have no knowledge of. We've done some amazing things with our channeling, and it's just, I've learned to recognize different energies when they come through for us. In the beginning, we did have some spirits come through and give us bad information, say they were somebody they weren't. But now that we've become much more adept at it, I can tell by the energies, who I'm speaking to. In a lot of instances, I can generally see the spirit.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing. I instantly thought in my head, like, did you have any near-death experiences before you were able to start doing this, or
no?
No.
I mean, I've had quad bypass and all that kind of stuff, but no,
Yeah.
I can never say that I had a near-death experience.
Okay.
When I had the bypass, I was actually kind of looking forward to it, but it never happened.
So, who was the first energy you channeled?
Well, actually, some of the first energies that we started with were family members.
Family. Oh, wow. That had to be really moving.
My dad, my mother, they would come through for us, and we would speak to them. Then we realized we could speak with animals. So some of the earlier stuff we did was channeling animals, too.
Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. Okay. And so you have a new book, Spirit Speak Channeling the Life of Jesus. So you're now channeling Jesus.
That's correct.
And how did that happen? Like, how did you know it was Jesus, for one?
Right out the gate.
Yeah, right out the gate. I'm sure you just had this feeling like you were new, but I'm curious to hear, what happened.
It was this amazing energy that came through. We started, before we channeled Jesus himself, we'd actually channeled Mother Mary.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, when she came into us the first time, I mean, that energy that she has, Connie and I, we just had tears coming down our face when she's with us. And she gave us messages and filled us in on some information. And like the second time she ever came through, we were sitting in our apartment, and we had the channeling board on our dining room table. And our one cat, our male cat called Leo, he was sitting on the counter in a box, and he was watching us. And while I'm channeling Mary, I can just see these two little eyes and ears looking over the top of the box, watching what's going on. And we finish with Mary, and Leo stands up. And I said, "Okay, Leo, what do you have to say?" And his message was, "I don't believe I just saw Mary."
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Think about that.
Goodness.
That cat's soul recognized Mother Mary when he saw her.
The cat did.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow, that's so interesting.
It is interesting because it makes me think of like reincarnation and so on and so forth.
This cat that we've had has been with my wife in 2 prior lives.
Oh.
So we had a Tonkinese about 15 years ago, and we had to put it to sleep. And its name was Bodacious. And we actually started talking to Bodhi when he was on the other side about 5 years ago. And I tried to talk him into coming back to us because he was a wonderful cat. So finally he says, "I will return to you in 13 months, but I'm going to be a black kitten, and I will find you." Within 1 week of when he said, a black kitten finds us.
Oh my gosh.
And this cat has got the exact characteristics that it had in its prior life as when it was a Tonkinese. I mean, it's my wife's cat. The cat cuddles with her the same way. I mean, they're just as close as they were in that prior life. I'll take you a step further in this story. My wife said, I wonder if he was ever with us before he was a Tonkinese cat. So we had the channeling board, and she says, Bodhi, were you ever with us before you were, before you came to us as a cat? And on the channeling board, it spells out the word starlight, Starlight. And Starlight was the name of her pony when she was a kid.
Oh.
Oh my goodness.
It's like this whole episode's going to be the whole stuff. This is amazing. I can't stress that enough. This is amazing. And I'm 100%, I've been a believer, but I'm 100% full beyond believer of all this. And it just, yeah. Oh, goodness. Okay.
Well, Leo, Bodhi wouldn't come back. I mean, it's amazing how the cats were born in Baltimore, about 100 miles away from us. And there's this long story about how we're led to them. But the first time we went down to pick Bodhi up, the black one, she wouldn't come with us. So we're coming up in the car, and then both of us say at the same time, there was an orange cat there that she wants to bring along for company. So we go back down. Within 5 minutes, we pick the two cats up and back. Well, then we find out that this orange cat was actually my daughter's dog in prior life. And it was a golden retriever in that life, and he comes back as a tabby cat, a golden cat. So both of the cats that we have now are both members of our animal soul family.
Oh, I never thought about animals being a part of your soul family before.
I never thought.
They follow you through multiple lives and reincarnations.
Oh my goodness. Because I mean, recently, or probably about a year ago.
It's been a year, yeah.
I was at FedEx, like the main hub where the trucks and stuff were, and this little like black cat just kind of like came up to me and like sat on my lap and took him home, and he's been absorbed into the family, and it was just like he knew. I don't know. He just came up and sat on my lap, so it's making me like my brain go like maybe he was a part of our family and he found us.
Oh, exactly. No, that was not an accident. He was a member of. He was with you earlier in your life. When you were a kid, did you have a dog, small dog, when you were a kid?
My grandmother had a dog.
Named Pepper.
It was a little black dog.
Yeah, I was going to say, you beat me to it. I was going to say, did you have a black dog when you were a kid? Well, no. That little cat is Pepper reincarnated.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah, because whenever I spent a lot of time with my grandmother when I was little. She lived down the street from me, and 'cause she babysat me when I was little, and she had a little black dog named Pepper. Oh my gosh. Salvador.
Yeah. Oh, I beat you to it, sorry. Oh, wow.
Wow. Oh, I can't wait to tell her mom. She's going to be like, oh, Pepper.
Well, because Salvador has little Pepper, like, gray hairs in his fur. Pepper.
There's your giveaway.
There's your giveaway. Think that obvious, and you just write him off. Okay. Wow.
Okay, that's amazing.
Period.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So back on topic.
Let's get back to the book. Okay?
Yes, back to the book.
Do you want to tell our listeners about your new book?
Well, what the book does, and I mean, we're going to probably irritate an awful lot of your listeners, but there's a lot of things that are in the Gospels that have been changed by man through time. I mean, Constantine in 325 AD begins the selection. And we actually, I'll digress just a second here. I have a YouTube channel where we channel with famous spirits, and we actually interviewed the soul that was Constantine. And I have that video up on my YouTube channel. But he told us what went into the selection of the Gospels. Well, after they're selected, man makes many, many changes into them. And for instance, during the Gospels really don't speak at any length at all about the first 28 years in the life of Christ. Talk a little bit about, his birth. They have a little incident that supposedly happened when he was 12 years old. And the next thing you know, he's 31, or he's 28 years old, and he's beginning to his ministries. So Jesus lived a life during that time, but nobody knows what it was. So when he came to us, he told me that he wanted his story told, the true story of his life. So we start and we devote chapters to the different portions of his life. To his birth, for instance, a fair amount of what's in the Gospels is correct on his birth. But the most interesting thing is about the wise men that come to him. You know, we're used to seeing 3 wise men come up to the manger and all that. Well, the wise men don't actually show up until he's about 3 months old, because they had to come from Persia. And there was not just 3, there was like 50 of them in their party, because they had security. They had to go see Herod first to check in and get permission. Then they go see the baby Jesus. And by the time they show up, Jesus is like 3 months old, which makes a lot of sense if you stop and think about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they bring gifts, and they bring gifts of frankincense, gold, and myrrh, and they do that. Well, as it turns out, Mary and Joseph used those gifts to pay for their trip to Egypt and to pay for their living expenses while they're in Egypt, because they had to flee Herod. So that was all part of God's plan, where they bring the gifts give them the cash they need to travel to Egypt and to live, where they stay until Herod's gone, and they feel it's safe to come back to Judea. So the story of the birth of Jesus becomes so more believable when you break away some of the, all the background things that you read in the Gospels. So during Jesus's life, when he's 15 years old, he travels, but he stays in the Mediterranean area. I mean, there's rumors out that he goes to China, that he goes to Great Britain. That's all false. He travels for a couple years into in the general area of Judea, goes to Egypt, along the Mediterranean coast, but he doesn't really go, the massive travels that some rumors have him doing. He returns home. He's 17, 18 years old. He meets this woman, falls in love, and gets married. And his wife's name is Toba, T-O-B-A. And they live together. They are married for 7 years. And during that 7 years, they actually have 5 children. And in my book, I tell you, we actually get into the lives of the children of Jesus. He tells us what they did, how many children they have. So there is an actual direct line of individuals from Jesus when he walked the earth.
Like in modern day?
Yes, they're still descendants. I mean, there are many, many, many generations removed after 2,000 years.
Yeah.
But there are people out there that actually would have been, that are descendants of the children of Jesus.
Oh my, wow.
But I mean, in my book, I name they tell me the story of the children, what their married life was like. They're friends with John the Baptist. We channel with John, and he tells us about how his ministry is launched. And then we go through and we tell the story of his ministries, the truth of it. He gives a lot of details, talks about the Beatitudes, what he really taught. And Jesus, when he was alive, taught a very, very simple message of love. He never spoke in parables. The Bible is one of the most difficult books to comprehend. People have huge differences of understanding just in what's written in the Gospels. When Jesus actually teaches, he is talking to the uneducated and the poor. If he would have spoken in parables or in difficult language, they would have thrown rocks at him, and he would have been forgotten. So he teaches this simple message of love. Have the love of God in your heart, show love to others, and others will show love to you. Very, very simple message that he teaches. He tells us about some of the miracles that he does. He does raise Lazarus from the grave, but he also raised 2 others from the grave that the Gospels don't include. So in my book, he tells us exactly what takes place during his ministry. And then he tells us we have a chapter dedicated to his death. Well, as it turns out, a lot that's written about his death is not accurate. The 2 Marys are present at his death, his mother Mary and Mary Magdalene. All of the male disciples are afraid that the Romans are going to kill him. going to kill them as well if they show up. So the disciples are basically in hiding, and they figured only the women would have been safe to go to the crucifixion. He tells us that the soldiers actually knew that he was special, and they were not cruel to him. They followed their orders like they were supposed to. But they didn't give him vinegar to drink. They didn't gamble over his clothing and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. That he dies on the cross, and he dies silently with dignity. Because of how the soldiers felt towards him, they actually bring his body off the cross. Now, it was a custom in those days that the bodies would have been allowed to rot on the cross. But they bring his body off, give it to Joseph of Arimathea, and they take it, and he is buried in the cave that's owned by Joseph of Arimathea. And then he tells us about the resurrection. Tells us about his conversation with Mary, who's the first person. Mary Magdalene is the first person he appears to. Talks about his conversation appearing to St. Peter, and basically tells us what he tells the disciples when he appears to them as well. The first person that he actually appears to after his death is his wife, Toba. Mm. Now, nobody knows about his married life, and there's a very good reason for it. Jesus feared that if the Romans ever found out that he was married, that they would kill his wife and children as well. So his married life is the best kept secret out there. He only ever tells Peter that he was married. That is the only disciple that ever knew of his marriage, and Peter was sworn to silence over it. So that's the simple reason why nobody ever knew he was married.
Wow. So and it makes complete sense.
The life that we tell in this book is a completely believable story of our Lord. I mean, he says, like when he was crucified, the sky doesn't turn black, the dead don't rise from the grave, and there aren't earthquakes. He simply dies with dignity on the cross. So a lot of the stuff that is so difficult to believe in the Gospels is because it's difficult to believe, because it didn't happen. And in my book, I tell the story of what actually does take place in his life. Now, he wants me to write 3 volumes concerning this. I have another book ready to go, and it's about the messages. He has messages concerning what's going on and a bunch of things. But in that book, we start with a channeling section. The first chapter is a channeling session with Moses. So we channel Moses.
Okay.
We channel John the Baptist. We have chapters devoted to many of the disciples. We have a big chapter simply with his messages. And then we have a chapter with Mother Teresa, and we finish up with a chapter with Billy Graham. And there is a reason why we finish up with Billy Graham. Jesus has 5 children. His oldest child was named Elijah. So we are doing a live radio show a couple years ago. And we were taking call-ins from around the country. And it was about 3 months after Billy Graham had died. So the caller says, "Do you think you could channel Billy Graham?" I said, "Well, we'll certainly try." I asked for him, and all of a sudden I hear, "How can I help you?" So we have the channeling board there. So I say, "Would you mind, you have to prove to me that we really have the spirit of Billy Graham." And on the channeling board, he writes out the name Elijah, meaning that he was the reincarnated child of Jesus.
Wow.
And we found this out on live radio with video. It was wild.
My gosh. Oh.
Yeah, Connie and I are sitting there because we're the only 2 people in the world that know the name of the oldest child of Jesus. And he spells this thing out. We're sitting there stuttering and looking at each other, don't know what to say next. But yeah, it was Billy Graham. So that's why we included his chapter as the last one in the next book.
Oh, wow. So we know one of Jesus's,
one of his names.
Well, bear in mind, it's the reincarnated soul.
Okay,
that's
soul.
That's not bloodline.
Oh, okay.
His soul was the oldest child of Jesus in that lifetime.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I can't believe it's on live,
yeah, live. Okay, so since we're on reincarnation, can we talk about that?
Sure.
What does Jesus say what has he told you about reincarnation?
When Jesus taught of everlasting life, he taught of the everlasting life of the soul through reincarnation. That is what he taught. He did not talk of directly to the people of reincarnation, but he did talk to the disciples and his close followers of reincarnation, because it was a very, very difficult concept for the ancients to understand. Just the same as the story of Adam and Eve, for the first man, was the only way that they could understand it. So that's why Adam and Eve are in the Gospels. But that's not how man was created. So much of what he spoke had to be tailored to what the people would believe.
Okay.
Yeah, reincarnation. Your soul has basically been around since creation. Your soul energy. Your soul energy has been around long before man walks the earth. Humanoids have only been here for like 250,000 years. Universe is 13 billion years old. So your soul energies were around long before man walks the earth. Now
okay.
you can guess where your souls were, or I can fill that in for you as well.
Fill it in. I was going to ask you, where were we?
I've written 2 books on aliens.
Yeah, this is your, sorry, we didn't mention, this is your 6th book that you've written.
Yeah, the Jesus book is my 6th. So I've written 2 books about aliens. And that is based on us channeling with the spirit with a soul that was an alien in its last life. Now you ask yourself, why can I do that? Because aliens have the same soul energy that humans have. So, where was your soul long before humans walked the earth? They were on the other intelligent planets, living lifetimes and God and serving God, hopefully in those lifetimes in those other planets. Because our God is the God of our galaxy. And there is an immense amount of alien life out there. I have seen a real alien, and my wife has been abducted by them. So we can assure you that what we're telling you in the reality is that they do exist. They're around us, and they are here in many ways that you cannot conceive of.
Are you familiar with like the starseed idea about how a lot of souls have come here to help lift, I guess, the vibration of the planet? So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Have you gotten any information
About the ascension?
Yeah.
Well, all right, let me back up a second.
Okay.
There's 7 realms in heaven. There's no hell with a guy with a red suit and fire. But there is a lower level where they send the bad guys. So there is something similar, but not what you think of. The concept of fire and brimstone was brought up by the church so that people feared. If they didn't fear what would happen to their souls, they wouldn't rely on the organized religions. So that's how that whole concept comes about. Jesus never taught of the concept of hell. He spoke that if people lived a good life, they would join him in heaven. But the whole idea of reincarnation is the soul returns and has to learn lessons. And it takes many, many lessons for the soul to advance in the realms of heaven. To reach this, God is in the 7th realm, as are those closest to him. He has a soul family that has served him for millions of lifetimes on many of the other planets. That is how they have obtained the 7th level, is by serving those lifetimes for the millions and billions of years. And by serving him, he has a soul family that has advanced. When he decided that Jesus was God incarnate. So when he decides it was time that he had to come back, because paganism had taken over the world at that time. And he had sent back servants before, Moses and all the Israelites and all that stuff. But he felt that it was time that he had to come back himself to speak the words of the one God. And that's what he did. But when he comes back, he brings members of his soul family with him. Mother Mary was a member of his soul family. She'd been with him many lifetimes. Joseph, John the Baptist. All of the souls that come back to assist him are members of his soul family. And this was all part of God's plan. And that's how everything comes about. But it's because those souls had served him millions of prior lifetimes on the other intelligent planets in our galaxy. That'll make you think a little bit, won't it?
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
my gears are going. Oh my goodness.
My gears are going. I have lost all train of thought of the questions I was going to ask. So my mind's just going like, the universe is way more complex than we can even fathom, understand, or even dream of.
Yes.
And
you have to live on these other planets because there are emotions you've never felt. There are languages you've never heard of. There are beings that you can't conceive of. Every planet is different. Humans are a unique species, but we are a very, very young culture. They tell us that extraterrestrials have visited our planet since the time of the dinosaurs over 70 million years ago.
Wow.
So these cultures are incredibly advanced. They worship the same God we do, and many of them have totally learned the lesson of love that God teaches. Because with their advanced technologies, they could wipe out entire planets if they wanted to. But they have learned that the concept of mutual destruction is mutually destructive. So these guys get along out there. And a lot of what we're told about the alien population around us is simply not true.
Why do you think we're told these stories?
What stories?
Just the fear of like aliens and
Well, fear is natural.
Okay.
People, they fear things they don't understand. For instance, when I saw a real alien, it was a reptilian and it stood about 7 foot tall. But I mean, I was in the middle of all this stuff at the time, and I simply didn't fear it. But if an average person would have seen something like that, they would have had a heart attack. I mean, in my Spirit Speak of the Universe book, I talk of over 250 different alien types.
Oh my goodness.
And I have a drawing of one type, which is really bizarre,
Yeah.
So I mean, to see many of the types would be terrifying for humans. Now there are types that walk among us that we can't tell. Palladians, for instance, they've been with us for generations, and they're human, but they have the Palladian blood. Many of us have alien blood.
You hear about people, they talk about Rh negative, and now it's like making me think of that when you said alien blood. Oh, wow. Okay, let's get back on track.
Okay, so I want to circle. So I want to circle back to like the Lost Gospels and that female disciples. Like we were, the Bible and so on and so forth that we have seen in our time doesn't really mention at all any female disciples
or women being having a place.
Well, in the beginning it did. Mary Magdalene was worshipped for 1,200 years. In the 13th century, the Catholic Church decides that women are getting too strong in the church. Prior to the 13th century, priests were allowed to marry, and their wives were gaining power in the church. So the church decides that they've got to stop this. So all of a sudden, Mary Magdalene becomes a prostitute, and priests no longer can marry.
Wow.
So, yes, in the beginning, there were 5 female disciples of Jesus. Mary Magdalene was a trusted disciple.
Wow.
And there were 4 other strong female followers of his. There were like 50 of people and their families that followed him. It wasn't just 12 following along after Jesus. You had basically 50 of them. My wife was a follower of Jesus, and in that lifetime, she was a male named Nathaniel. And Nathaniel is never mentioned in any of the Gospels, but she was there in that lifetime.
I had always thought there had to have been women disciples.
Of course. Women, people didn't. Women had a strong role in those days. They had to. Things were so difficult in the way of life. The women had to be strong women. Mary Magdalene was the first of the female followers. She actually has epilepsy, and Jesus heals her. It's one of the first healings that he does. Now, Mary Magdalene came from a very wealthy family, and Mary Magdalene actually provides financing for much of the travels of Jesus and his followers. Now, Mary Magdalene plays an incredibly important role.
It's crazy how history, how it can be changed the way it has been, and
Well, it's adapted for someone's
gain.
for someone's gain or to control.
Well, that's what we're seeing now. They're tearing down monuments and they're destroying the history. I mean, you have good things and bad things. You need to study the bad things. You can't. If you eliminate all the bad things that happened in history, you'll make the same mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, that's what's happening now here in the United States. They're tearing monuments down. Now, I'm located 8 miles from Gettysburg, where the big battle was fought. So when you come here, the Confederates and the Union soldiers, in our minds here, they're both soldiers of our country. They fought for different things, but they still fought and died here on this land. And people need to understand why they were here, what they did. Hiding what took place will help nobody. I mean, slavery was absolutely terrible, but if you don't understand it, it could pop its ugly head up again. I mean, people have got to take note of what it was, hate it, and continue to hate it. But if that memory goes away, how do you hate something when the memory's gone? They don't even teach history in the schools down here anymore.
No. Wow. Okay. You want to touch on the Lost Gospels?
Yes, I did want to touch on the Lost Gospels.
Okay.
There had to have been many.
Yeah.
Well, at Nicaea in 325 AD, there were actually 300 Gospels presented. Now, of those 300, they select 27. Revelations was not selected originally. It doesn't come into play until about 100 years afterwards. Because Revelations, by the time you were into the 5th century, the church is trying to teach fear. And Revelations obviously talks about the end of the world and second coming and all that stuff. So it's starting to play into the format that the churches are adopting. But there were many, many Gospels. Many weren't complete. Now, what you have to bear in mind, when Jesus walks the earth, nobody is taking notes, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The earliest writings date to about 70 AD. Now, he is crucified in 30 AD. So the earliest writings are taking place from stories that have been around for 2 generations. Now, there are different facets of the Christian church. By 325, there's no unity in Christianity. They're fighting among themselves. There's actually riots on whether Jesus was a deity, whether he was a prophet. So Constantine is the first Christian emperor of the Roman Empire. So believe it or not, the first thing he does is settle the date that Easter is to be celebrated. So they couldn't even decide on that. Now, what we're seeing, the Gospels are selected 300 years after the death of Christ. That is longer than the United States has been in existence. And they're selecting Gospels from a time where everything was handwritten, the notes were easily lost, stories changed from generation to generation. So, in 300 years, how many generations are you playing with? Like 30?
Jeez.
So that's how the stories come about. So many, many different Gospels are written. The Dead Sea Scrolls were probably written around the time that Jerusalem was destroyed. I think that was around 50 to 60 AD. So the Dead Sea Scrolls were hidden to protect them from the Romans, and then they're found. So those are probably pretty accurate in originality as what you see in the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Okay, that's what our brother was saying. We actually had our brothers on, and they are comparing Dead Sea Scrolls with the King James version. And there's just like little things like the word charity is used instead of love, and they were saying that it changes like the message of what love is. Really, really interesting you brought that up.
Well, that's based on earlier writings from the Old Testament. Earliest writings, I think the earliest writings is about 600 BC for the Gospels.
Okay.
So much of what's in the Old Testament is just strictly stories.
Mm-hmm. That's how it gets all.
It's
Well,
jumbled.
yeah. But think about this. You got people telling stories. The stories are told from generation to generation, and they're being. Make a phone call to a friend, tell them a story, and have him pass it on to 5 other friends, and see what story winds up at the end. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
And that is why he wanted me to write this book, to tell the true story of what he spoke and what took place.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and like, why wouldn't, I've always thought too, like, why wouldn't, like, Jesus come to people, and even after, like, the Bible, like, coming, you know, how he's come to you, and, like, why wouldn't there be more of that? Like, I think it's still out there. It's just we don't.
He does talk to others. It's not just me. There are a lot of people that fake it. The reason I put every session that we do up on my YouTube channel, so people can actually watch us receive the messages and make up your own mind. So, I mean, if you think we're full of crap, so be it. But you can go in and see it and make your own decision. But listen to the words, listen to the messages. They are incredibly wonderful messages that we bring.
Oh, man. That's like amazing. Oh, wow. Okay, you wanted to ask about the Roman Catholic Church?
I did. So why? Well, I know why, because Constantine, you know, did the massive edits of the original text, but it's very fear-driven, a lot of the messages.
Yeah.
Why do you think so? Why do you think that is?
Why? Well, it's very simple. First of all, the Roman Catholic Church does all of their teachings in Latin. The common person had absolutely no way to understand what they were speaking. So what they had to do is they established the concept that the average person could only find God through the church. They had to come through the priest. They come up with purgatory. They come up with ideas to raise money. But first of all, they have to develop fear in the people. People have to fear that if they don't go to the church, they're going to burn forever in hell. And they have to build a relationship where the people have to rely 100% upon the Catholic Church in order for their souls to be saved. And the last thing the church is ever going to talk about is the concept of reincarnation, because they don't want the people to believe that your soul gets a second chance.
Wow.
For it to be effective, the people have got to believe that they have one lifetime to live, that their soul, whether they go to heaven or to burn in hell, depends on whether they give their money and their time and belief to the Catholic Church. And that exists until 1500, when Martin Luther breaks away and does the Protestant Reformation.
Wow.
But there's 1,200 years where the Roman Catholic Church totally controls and dominates the religious thinkings of the Christians in the world.
Well, fear controls people.
That's why. And that's why Jesus never talked of fear. He said, if you live a good life, love others, you will join me in heaven. That's what he taught. He didn't say, if you're bad, you're going to go to hell.
Yeah, we put that in there, huh?
You got it.
I had to add that little tidbit.
Yeah. See, I always feel too, like, if you're fearful, wouldn't that affect your own connection spiritually to God and, you know, Jesus and the angels? I mean, our brother had said, like, let's say you have a stepfather that you're afraid of, you wouldn't really be that close to him, would you? So I always felt that way, like, I don't want to fear God. Like,
No, you want to love God.
yes.
It's the love of God in your heart that brings you the spirituality. And the once you have the true love of God in your heart, then channels of communication open up. You start you start to feel good. Hatred is the worst thing that anybody can have, because hatred just eats your soul. It destroys your life path. It destroys everything around you. If you hate a person, that person will hate back. So it's
Poison.
hatred. Yes, hatred is pure poison. But you will be absolutely amazed once you come around and show this love, and your doubts are gone. You'll receive messages in your mind. They come to you in your dreams. You get messages, and it's just. Some people refer to it as raising your vibration. I never truly understand this vibration stuff, but I can assure you that the most comforting thing you can do is to get rid of the hatred.
That's so true.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I don't know. That's a great message, especially I feel like, I mean, I guess in America anyways, the way our society's structured, it's a lot of like that energy of I gotta get mine. Like it's like a competition, and you end up not liking people and things, and
Finding reasons not to.
Yeah.
And always wanting to get ahead of the next man instead of holding their hand and taking them with you on the way.
It's okay to dislike. There's a big difference between disliking and hating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're seeing hatred in our government today. It's destroying our government.
yeah.
I mean, the hatred that we have in Washington is just unbelievable.
Wow. Man. I'm glad you have your book. I mean,
Well, all the books.
yeah.
We definitely have to pick up the alien ones as well. I didn't even
Just read all of them.
Yeah, I was gonna read them all.
Why wouldn't God be present galactically?
Yeah, well, it's no matter how you refer to him. Now, I'm coming at this from the Christian side of it, okay? Keep in mind that his message is one of many paths. Christianity represents 25% of the world population. Do not think for 1 minute that Christians are the only ones that go to heaven. I mean, think about the people out there that never even heard of Jesus. Or think about all of the people that lived before Jesus walked the earth. You think they went to hell because they didn't know Jesus? No. If they lived good lives, they advanced. If they lived bad lives, they did not advance. They can actually go into the next. They can be demoted in realms. They're judged by how they live their lives. Hindus, they go to heaven. It's how they live their lives. Buddhists, I mean, all the different world religions. Islam, the good Islam people go to heaven. It's how they live their lives. There are many, many paths to heaven. I mean, when I say that I channel with Jesus, Jesus is the personification of the universal energy of a God, how you want to refer to him. You refer to him as spirit, God, however. Mm-hmm. But it's that universal energy that focuses on how people live their lives. And how they live their lives determine what will happen when they pass over into the next dimension. And keep in mind this, in the spirit world, spirits speak of death as the beginning of the cycle. Humans think of it as the end. It is only death that frees you to begin another cycle of reincarnation.
So you had mentioned that it's like this universal energy of like good. Is there a flip to that? Like in regard, when you think of like Satan and the light.
Well, there is. Well, Satan is a personification of negative energy.
Okay.
All evil is created on this side. There is no evil in heaven. It is never created in heaven. When you enter with your life plan, evil is never a part of it. But God gave you free will and egos, and that he gave you that so that you are tested. It is how you respond to your free will and ego while you're on earth that will determine what will happen when you return. And they always talk about returning home. This is not your home. This is very temporary. A human life is the blink of the eye and the life of the soul.
That's funny. Our father had a out-of-body experience years ago, and he had said something along those lines, that this was just a blink.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Oh, that's so powerful.
Before we recorded, you mentioned that Jesus gave you certain abilities to be able to prove that it's actually Jesus coming through. Can you mention that briefly?
Well, the first thing he did is he gave me the ability to heal others. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. I'm going to just jump out there and heal others. So he actually gives me the names of people that I'm supposed to go heal. I go over, I say the special prayer, and they're healed. I mean, the one woman had massive migraines, and she hasn't had one now for 4 years. And I mean, one woman had a bad heart condition. She's still kicking around. I mean, I've said this prayer for people with stage 4 cancers, and they're here 4 years now. And it's just the one thing that I understand totally is that it is not me personally that does the healing. I am a vessel that God goes through to heal others. But That he had to convince me like that. And then he even takes it a step further. 2 years ago, I had a heart attack, and I go into the hospital, and they're getting ready to take me into surgery. And they come in and they show me all this, the video of the heart damage and all the stuff going on. They got to put stents in. There's no blood getting and all that crap. So I'm laying there waiting to go into the surgery. And in my mind's eye, I see this angel coming, flying. I can see the wings flopping. It comes up, looks at me, and flies off. And I told Connie, I said, there's nothing to worry about. Just relax. This is going to be fine. So we go into surgery. And when I wake up, I said, okay, how many stents did we have? He said, none. We couldn't find any heart damage. I said, what do you mean you couldn't find any heart damage? I've just gone through all this crap and there's no heart damage. I feel like I got a short end of the stick here. He said, no. He said, no, we went through. He said, your bypass is perfect. Everything's working. You have no heart damage. We can't understand what happened. We said, oh, okay. So they wheel me back, and I'm laying in there, and in my head I hear, just as clear as can be, the words, if I can have you heal others, I can heal you as well. He had performed a full medical miracle on me, and he had healed my heart. And when that angel flew up and looked at me, that was when I was healed. And I found out the other night when I was with Raphael, I asked him, I said, was that you? And he said, yes.
Wow. Because you are also able to channel the Archangels as well.
Correct.
Oh, wow. And that's on your YouTube channel if anybody's interested.
Yeah, all this is on his YouTube channel.
It's in my name, Barry Strohm. It's all free. You can go in and look at it. I have 90 videos up. Go in and judge for yourself. That's what I tell everybody. You don't have to believe a word that I'm saying. Just go in and make your own judgment.
Do you get a lot of backlash?
Oh, yeah, sure. Especially from evangelicals.
Oh, yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, sometimes I think demonic's a good word. I hear it so much.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Oh my god. They can't handle your energy, I guess.
No, I'm bringing them the most wonderful messages of love and faith, and they can't open their minds enough to listen to what I have to say. No, it's. Yeah. I mean, there are certain religions out there that feel that only their members go to heaven.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes. Yeah.
Well, they're in for a shock.
Oh, goodness gracious. Oh, man.
Just be a good person and
love.
Follow the path of love. And
live a life of love. Be good to others. Let them be good to you. Do help others. Like, we don't charge for anything that we do. This is my mission. This is what I've been sent back to do. This is my life plan, and I am following it, and we just try to help others.
Our previous guest, had a conversation about helping, like, her big message was helping people more. And it was very similar to what you were saying. She was talking about how, like, when you have this, like, love, you look at others with love, you don't want to see anything bad happen to them. You don't want to see it, like, you want to help them. It's like how you look like your family members or like your close friends. If you look at the world that way, we'd live in a much better place.
Your reward is when you get that email that your words have brought somebody to love God. That's your reward. There's a high involved in that when you read that email or hear those words that you can't compare to anything else. I mean, you can chase money if you want, but that high is one that you cannot replace.
Wow. It's just been a great conversation. You've definitely taken us aback quite a few times.
You did.
Yeah. Is there anything else you would like to add for our listeners? Anything else you would like to say?
Well, I think they would enjoy my book. All my books are on Amazon. They even have the Jesus book on sale right now, so it's a pretty good deal. Love to have them buy the book. Please leave reviews because they're very helpful. I have got multiple websites. I have one called spiritspredict.com. I have another one called wordsofgodthenandnow.com. We have a Facebook group called Words of God Then and Now. And I've got like 5 or 6, 7 different pages on Facebook. And it's all free. You can come in, join the group, So we have a wonderful group of people in it. And there are actually some people in there that are their souls have walked with Jesus. So
Wow.
we have some people that have returned to try to help others, and it's a great group.
Wow.
Now, on the YouTube channel, I also have what we refer to as a Speaking to Spirit series,
Okay.
where we interview historic people. We've interviewed Constantine, Jack Kennedy, Houdini, Tesla, just all kinds of people, Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, and we just did Martin Luther last week.
Oh,
And you can go in and listen to these interviews. And we generally ask them about 35 to 40 questions in an interview, and I channel their answers. So there's a lot to, my YouTube channel offers a lot. If you would please subscribe while you're there, it would be quite helpful. But if not, just enjoy the videos.
Well, we're subscribing.
oh yeah. I think I already described.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on here, sharing the
Yes.
message you've shared.
Sorry I messed up your questions.
No,
Oh,
don't
no.
apologize. I was just before we even started recording, that really took me back.
You made her cry.
And, yeah, you made me cry.
Oh, man.
Archangel Raphael made me cry.
Really felt it.
Gosh.
Did you feel his energy while I was doing it?
I did. It hit me like a wave
Yeah.
of
That's what it's like. That's how you know it's real.
It's just, everything is amazing. All of it. Like,
everything about it's amazing.
Okay, so now it's time for Reiki. As usual, at the end of every podcast, we like to send our listeners some distant Reiki. We advise that you do not drive or operate any vehicles during this mini Reiki session because Reiki sometimes can make you sleepy. So for this session, all you have to do is sit back, relax, and be open to receiving the energies. We like our clients to meditate, but you don't have to. You'll still get the Reiki energy. The music will change, and when the music stops, the Reiki session has ended. Thanks for listening. Bye.